Let's just jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're completely bypassing the crowded, familiar spots you see on every travel blog. Instead, we're stepping into the untouched, untamed realms of our planet. We're talking about environments shaped over millions of years by unimaginably volatile weather, extreme geological pressure, and just raw primal forces. These are places where nature operates entirely on its own terms, and honestly, it is wild to see. And that brings us to a really fascinating question. What does the Earth actually look like where humans don't rule? Like when you strip away all our interference, what is left? Over the next few minutes, we're going to explore exactly how the planet acts as its own ultimate architect. We'll see how life adapts to the absolute limits of survival, and how ancient humans actually learned to cooperate with these primal spaces rather than trying to conquer them. So starting off with Section 1, Earth's raw creative power, the geologic architects. We're looking straight at the raw, volatile forces, like the breathing, constantly regenerating crimson lava flows of places like Iceland's Fagradalsfjall volcano that literally build the ground we walk on. Take a look at this concept. It's what we call an entrenched river meander. Down at Gooseneck State Park, the turbid, thick brown water of the San Juan River got completely locked into its ancient path. Basically, as the land of the Colorado Plateau uplifted over millions of years, the river couldn't change course, it was trapped. So it just kept cutting deeper and deeper into the solid rock. It's crazy to think about, but to travel just a mile and a half forward, this river is forced to flow nearly 6 miles through these massive successive loops. And that immense scale of time, well, it's perfectly illustrated by karst topography. Look at God's Bridge in Bulgaria. What we have here was once an ancient limestone cave that slowly collapsed over countless millennia, leaving behind this gigantic 82-foot-wide natural rock bridge. But here's the cool part. That massive arch still retains moisture. So right underneath it, there's this lush, hidden micro-ecosystem of moss and ferns that completely defies the dry rock surrounding it. It's almost like a secret garden hidden in plain sight. 30 million. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the unimaginable amount of time and crushing pressure required to sculpt these landscapes. We see this exact massive scale at White Rock, which is a towering 300-foot cliff glowing right out there in the prairie. Get this, it's formed entirely from the compressed marine fossils of an ancient ocean floor. And similarly, if you look at Badlands National Park, you're looking at ancient geological memory layers dating back over 30 million years. It's essentially a giant wall of history torn open right in the middle of the plains.
Moving right along to Section 2, Surviving the Extreme Fringes, where life meets absolute limits. We've seen how the Earth physically builds itself, but now let's see what happens when the planet pushes nature to the absolute edge.
Just look at these two radically different extremes. On one side, we have Antarctica. Now, technically, this is the planet's largest desert. It's a freezing, isolated ice sheet that holds a staggering 70% of the world's fresh water, yet temperatures there plummet to nearly 129 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Then, on the flip side, you have the Taklamakan Desert. This is a scorching 127,000 square mile void of shifting sand dunes hundreds of feet tall. The summer heat here tops 122 degrees, and it's so incredibly dry that rivers simply vanish into the sand before they ever reach the sea. Talk about total opposites. So, facing these brutal extremes, we have to ask the obvious question: how does any life actually survive in the void? Whether we're talking about the freezing, totally dark Antarctic winter where male emperor penguins literally stand completely still for months just to protect their eggs, or the oxygen-starved Hochschild Plateau sitting way up at nearly 15,000 feet. Somehow, nature just finds a way to endure. And that brings us perfectly into Section 3, Ecosystems of the Untamed, Thriving in the Wild. Let's zoom in on the magnificent life forms that haven't just survived, but have actually conquered these fierce conditions. Think of it as a stage spanning thousands of square miles. The Serengeti perfectly captures this wild, unfiltered survival. It's built on a foundation of ancient, nutrient-rich volcanic ash, which allows these endless grasslands to sustain an incredible density of millions of herbivores. And naturally, because of that massive roaming food source, it also hosts Africa's highest density of fierce predators. You've got lions, leopards, and hyenas all competing daily in this red dust landscape where the primal rules of survival are broadcasted in real time. It's nature at its rawest. But the Serengeti isn't alone here. Consider some of these incredibly unlikely wildlife refuges. Down in the Okavanga Delta, a disappearing river acts as a massive natural sand filter, providing life-saving, crystal-clear water for the world's largest elephant herds. Then, way up high in the Wolong Valley, dense bamboo forests sustain over 150 giant pandas. Over on the oxygen-scarce Ho-Sil Plateau, rare Tibetan antelopes are thriving in that thin, freezing air. And my personal favorite, Komodo Island. Ancient, 150-pound, 10-foot-long dragons absolutely rule here. They can smell prey from nearly 6 miles away. Oh, and the isolated females? They can actually reproduce without males. No way, right? It is just brilliant, unbelievable adaptation.
Which leads us to our final act, Section 4, Ancient Human Adaptations, Cooperating with Primal Forces. Because humanity hasn't just survived as a passive observer, ancient peoples miraculously synergized with these incredible landscapes. One historian called this a living laboratory far beyond its time. They were talking about Moray, which is this jaw-dropping Inca marvel built deep into the reddish-brown soil of the Andes. At first glance, it just looks like a giant, swirling pit in the ground, but it's actually an ancient masterpiece of agricultural engineering. It operates as a totally brilliant microclimate system. First, the Inca excavated these 3 concentric funnels 500 feet down. Then, they built perfectly symmetrical terraces using what's called the ashlar technique. This means they laid the stones with absolute precision and zero mortar, yet it still survives major earthquakes centuries later. Because of the specific depth and geometry of these funnels, they managed to create a 27-degree Fahrenheit temperature difference from the top to the bottom. This let them experiment with incredibly diverse crops all in one single place. They didn't fight nature, they completely harnessed it. And across the globe, this astonishing synergy repeats over millennia. Look at the pre-Inca era. Over 3,000 sparkling Mara salt ponds were carved directly into the Andes. They've been manually operated for thousands of years, fed continuously by a single mountain stream that crystallizes into these beautifully colorful pools. Or jump over to Guaremas centuries ago, where humans literally carved a civilization right out of the rock. They dug staggering 18-story deep underground cities to shelter tens of thousands of people from the harsh, arid climate. They even carved tiny homes for pigeons right into the natural rock fairy chimneys to aid their own agricultural survival. So, after seeing millions of years of intense geological pressure, extremes of blistering heat and freezing ice, predators surviving in the utter void, and ancient cities carved into the very bones of the earth, we are left with a pretty humbling question. Are we the masters of this planet, or merely passing guests in its magnificent, untamed house? I mean, it completely changes how you view our place amidst our planet's immense regenerating power, doesn't it? Thank you so much for exploring these untouched realms with me today in this explainer. I really encourage you to keep looking closer at the wild, untamed world around us. Catch you next time.